Hello, I am Crafty Patti, and I am back with another fun and intriguing art form. What would you say if I told you that this art form can be very healing, and it has been proven that when you start to draw these curvy lines and then you round off the corners, your neurons in your brain get activated. And this awareness and mindfulness can turn stress into calm. It has been proven to work. So, like how many times have we heard that stress causes so much disease? I know, as I suffer from fibromyalgia. And I know that it was stress related. I know that if I go to yoga more and meditate more, it really helps. Some of us have a really hard time doing the usual meditation where you try to clear your mind of all thoughts. I can't do it. It's really hard. It is not easy, and it takes years of practice. When I heard of the neurographic art, I was so intrigued, so I just had to learn more. Now, neuron, referring to the word neurons that are found in the brain, and graphic is the use of shapes or pictures. So I was thinking, a healing process, will I get to do art at the same time? That's a wow factor for me, and I think a lot of you too. Now, I am not a trained neurographic art teacher, and there are lots of teachers out there that have trained to do this artwork. So if you want to know more scientific forms of it and really the nitty-gritty of it, then there are lots of videos out there that you can watch if you really want to know the science behind it. But basically, the mindfulness drawing meditation was discovered and developed by Pavel Piskarev, who is a psychologist and creative entrepreneur. And I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing the name right. But Pavel claims that this art form awakens the dormant neuron connection, which stimulates positive change in the person. So it's a link between the conscious and the unconscious. So this connection is made by the neurons being activated in a way that brings forth awareness and mindfulness. So this awareness and mindfulness can turn stress into calm. So it is known that drawing and or painting increases the level of dopamine, and that's what makes us feel good. Neurographic art has been used as a healing aid for everything from stress relief, anxiety, chronic pain, and grief, etc. Now you might think that these drawings look really complicated to do, but really they're not. There's no artistic abilities required, and it's great for all ages. So I'm going to go through the steps with you to get you started, but keep in mind I am not a trained teacher in this art form, but I just really needed to show you because I'm so excited about this. So the first thing you want to do is kind of choose the medium you want to work in. It can be Sharpie markers, it can be acrylic markers, it can be pencil crayons, it can be watercolor pencil crayons, or it can be watercolor. Any medium that suits you is fine. So I'm going to show you acrylic markers further on in the video. So I think this time I'm going to start with some watercolor options. So once you've decided on the medium you want to work in, that will dictate what type of paper you're going to work on. For the markers, I use a marker paper because it's very, very smooth, and the markers flow really nicely over the smooth paper. If I want to work in watercolor, then I choose watercolor paper. And you can get that in different forms. This is an actual book with a hard cover front and back, and you've got your watercolor sheets that are actually attached to one edge. So you can work on that. You can also get just watercolor sheets, and then you can tape the edges down so it doesn't warp when you put water on it. You can also get a smaller version. This is an 8x8, and this is called a watercolor block. And what happens here is it's glued on both sides. So when you do your watercolor, it's not going to buckle, it's going to stay flat. And then when you're finished, you just take it off your block. I like using these. If you're not sure where you're going with this and you can't decide what you're working with, then you can also do a mixed media paper. And that will allow you to do watercolor. It's thick enough, markers, or whatever you want. So there's another option for you. So let's go through the steps together. There's basically 5 steps. You will want to focus on an issue that you have to start the healing process. Like say, for instance, it could be that you want to stop stressing so much, or maybe you want to be more patient with your children. Perhaps you had a disagreement with someone and you just need to let that go. Maybe you need to have some pain relief or whatever it is that you want to work on. So you take your pen and you write what you want to work on the back of your artwork. That's your step 1. The next thing I would suggest you do is turn on some beautiful meditation music, soft, relaxing music, whatever you like, and this will help you to relax even more. So I'm going to stop talking now. I know it's been a lot of talking, and I'm going to turn the camera down on here so you can see exactly what we're going to do. If you want to do a similar wash like I've done here, then feel free to continue to watch. If you know how to do watercolor, then by all means feel free to just zoom forward to the next step. And I'll have all the supplies, as always, in the description box below the video, so don't worry about having to write all this down. So I'm working on a watercolor block here. I'm just going to wet down my whole page here. Wet on wet for watercolor. Now you can come in and choose any colors you want, but I would suggest that you only work with 4 colors. That is what's recommended for this artwork. And we'll start with some Winsor blue here. I have put quite a bit of water in with my paint that has hardened, and I just want a really, really wet, dripping paint. Nothing too strong. And then you can just come in here and fill your boots. I'm going to come in with some of the cerulean blue, which is a bit lighter. And then I'll come in with some of my Viridian green. You can see my paint is old. There's big chunks in here, but I can push those out. Now you can choose to do this in stripes. You can choose to do it in circles, whatever you like. And I'll just top it off with some of my Winsor yellow. I'm not trying to do anything in particular here. I'm just getting the paint on. Let's get it out to the edges here. Doesn't have to be blended. Just whatever you like. No rights, no wrongs. Don't have to be a watercolor person to do this. You're just getting it on, just to have a beautiful background. And I'm going to come in with a little bit more of this darker Winsor blue, only because I like it. Look at how beautiful that is. Ooh. And if you feel like you've got too much saturation, you can always come in with a spray bottle and spray it out. Give it a spray. And then you get some beautiful effects of the water droplets on there as well. Now, I could be playing around with this for a long time, but we've got a video to finish up here. You can also let it tilt and just do some really fun things here. And then you get it fading out even more. All right, we're going to let that go. You can either let that dry naturally, or you can get the blow dryer on it and get it blow dried, and then we can get going with our lines. And I just wanted to show you one more thing because I went crazy with the water, just showing you different techniques. You can come in with a paper towel and just sop up some extra paint that's pooling, and that will also give you another really cool effect. So many things you can do with watercolor. For your neurographic lines, you can use the Artistro black in the kit, and those make quite nice lines. You can use your standard Sharpie fine point. This is going to be a little bit thicker line. Now, the only thing that I don't like about the Sharpie is it's an alcohol-based, and I don't like the odor of them. So I tend not to try to use these too much. And here's another choice. It's a Staedtler Permanent. It is waterproof, and it's a medium. And here's what this one looks like. So being that this one is very close in size to the Sharpie, I prefer this one because I don't get the odor that I get from the Sharpie markers. I suggest you try to practice your lines on a scrap piece of paper before doing it on your actual artwork. And your neurographic lines should be nice, smooth curves. And you don't want to do it fast. You want to do it nice and slow. And so what you're looking for is a really smooth line without thinking too much about it. And the thing is, your mind will be probably saying, I want to go up. That's when you should go down. And that's where you're going to get the different lines. Your mind might be saying, I want to go left. Nope, let's go right. I want to go up. Nope, let's go down. So this is what I'm trying to say is try to not think about it so much that you're creating patterns. You don't want to create patterns. You want to just create nice, smooth, flowing lines like so. You just don't want any repetition in any of the lines. If you're finding that hard to do, another technique is I'm left-handed. So try using your right hand and see what happens. By using your non-dominant hand, it's going to be harder to do. And as you can see, my non-dominant hand is a little harder to do, but I'm getting a really natural looking line that I'm not trying to create as hard because my brain is fighting the fact that I'm trying to do it right-handed. Another technique I saw by watching one of the teachers that was doing the neurographic art is using coins. So if you try to push these coins and you want to try to keep this coin ahead of this coin in line, it's going to force you to move in different directions. You can see how the coin is moving now. Now it's moving back the other way, and I'm trying to keep it so it's together. I'll get another piece of paper so you can see better. So again, I'm going to try to push my coin across to the other side of the page. And here we go. You can see already how it's turning. I'm trying to keep it right in front of the other coin. And there you go. You've drawn a neurographic line. You can try it with a smaller coin in front, and that will give you a different effect as well. It'll be a little harder to control, but that's what you want. You can see how I'm trying to push that coin to keep in front of the other coin. And there you have another neurographic line. Now this one has a little bit more sharp corners, but we're going to talk about rounding in the next step. So continue to practice, and you just don't want to see repetition in pattern. So let's say you're drawing a line like this. That's repetition in pattern. That's not correct. You want it to flow, so it's totally different. And just wherever you want to go, don't think about the pattern. Just make your neurographic lines. The line is meant to be drawn by letting the hand flow freely without any shape in mind. And when you're drawing your lines in your art, you usually want to go from top to bottom, side to side, corner to corner. You always want to start on an edge and come off an edge. So let's say we started here, and you want to go all the way to the other edge. Okay, so once you've practiced, let's go in and we'll start it on our actual watercolor background. Now you're ready to form your art. Again, from side to side, going freely. And this is where you want to focus on your challenge and let your hand draw your lines nice and freely, crisscrossing them if they want to, and focusing on your issue while doing your artwork. That will direct your neurons to enhance your ability to assist with solving your issue. You don't want to rush this. This is the calming effect. I'm not looking at what's on the pattern below. I'm just drawing my line. And you can even do this without looking at the paper. Look away and keep drawing and see what you get. You'll get some beautiful ideas. Let's do another one together. And this is where I'll be crossing over. You can cross over as many times as you want or not cross over at all. Depends on where you want to go. And the more you sort of say to yourself, oh, like we're talking about, I don't want to go up. Or your brain's saying, I want to go up. Make it go down. Your brain's saying, go right. No, go left. So you can kind of do this little play with your mind as well. Okay, I'm going to fast forward and I'm going to put a few more lines in here and then we'll go to the next process, which will be rounding your corners. And I'm thinking about what I want to work on right now. For me, I'm going to work on a little bit of pain I've got in my right thumb. I'm thinking about positive thoughts and how it's going to make me feel better if I just relax and calm down. So when you've drawn a few lines, have a look in your picture and see if you've got any really large areas. This one here is quite a large area. So I'm going to come up in here and try to break this up a little bit. I'm going to reach the edge, come back down, reach the edge. And even though I'm thinking about that more than I should be, I just wanted to break up those 3 areas. And I've got 3 areas here instead of one large area. Now what you can do is you can come in and you can start putting in more shapes. You can use circles, triangles, squares, and even spirals. Now, I don't know exactly how those fit into the neurographic art, but you can certainly look on the internet for more information on that. But basically anything that's rounded is really welcoming, so I'm not sure how the triangles and squares work into that. So please research that. I'm not going to do triangles and squares in this particular artwork, but I'm going to show you how to do some circles. Now circles, you don't want to grab a shape like taking a coin like that and trace around it. In neurographic art, you want to do it freehand. That's part of the process of being free and just do it. Now I'm looking up in here and I see half of a circle here. So I'm going to finish that off and form the best I can a fairly good circle. And I can go around a couple times just to perfect the circle if I need to. And if it's looking a little shaky in some area, just keep going around until you've got a nice circle. So there's one there. I see another one here. Let's make that one into a circle. Again, if the shape isn't quite right, you can come in. It doesn't matter if part of the line is thicker than the other, as long as you try to work on a nicer circle in here. Now, if you want to make a larger circle, they're harder and you're going to have to practice it a little bit more, but it is doable. Now, I'm working at an awkward angle right now, so I'm not at the best angle because I'm trying to keep my head out of the camera, but I will try to make a larger circle up here just so you can see, and we'll see how I do. So I'm just going to go, I'm using my finger here just a little bit as a guide, and I've got my wrist up and off, and I'll try my best to see how I do. And I'm going to go nice and slow, and I'm going to try to form the best circle I can freehand. And I totally messed up there. And I purposely did that. Well, I didn't purposely do it, but I can show you how that's okay and how we can fix that. So right now I've got it too far out in here, so I need to bring that edge in a bit more in here. And if I don't show you mistakes, then how are you going to know, right? And okay, there's my circle there. It needs to come out a little bit more here and in. That's a little bit better. Okay, so let's say here we can just fill that in with the black. That's okay, you're allowed to do that. And this one here, it's because it's inside my circle. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue that on, and I'm going to make another line and bring it off the page. Now it's connected. This one here, I've also got a line here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just bring it through. And now we've got that line. It's connected to somewhere. Okay, that's circles. I'll do a few more, speed it up, and then we'll do our next step. Step 3 is the process of rounding off. So what you're looking for is sharp corners in here, like an intersection. So what you're doing is you're making a U formation like that, making this nice and round, and you're filling in. Let's make a U on the other side, round that off, and a U over here, filling it in, and rounding off that as well. If your pen comes off and it makes a little bit of a jagged edge, then just carry on your line into your other one so it's nice and fluid. I will come down closer and we'll show you that again. Here's another intersection here. So I start up here, I bring it down, make a nice gradual U-shaping and fill it in. Come up onto this side, same thing. Into this side, rounding it off, and into here and rounding it off. Again, continue your line up if you need to make it nice and smooth. And they call that process transformation. And while you are rounding off your corners, that's when you're going to start to feel a calmness as your mind is concentrating on rounding all your corners and not thinking about all those other thoughts that usually enter your mind. This is a form of really easy meditation that's easy to do. You don't have to think too hard about it, but the process of just rounding all this is such a relaxing form of art. But as you're rounding all these corners, it's so relaxing. And this is where you're going to start thinking about what you wrote on the back of your paper, on what you want to work on. And I'm going to be thinking positive thoughts right now. I'm going to be thinking about how my thumb is going to heal and it's not going to hurt so much. I'm thinking I could put some ice on or take some medication, but I don't like to take medication. I like to try to heal it if I can on my own. And by doing this form of artwork, it's going to really help me to relax. And I find that normally when you're in pain, you tend to tense up. And that, again, is a form of stress, and you want to release that stress. So doing this process of rounding off is where you're going to find you can do your healing. So I think you're going to find that while you're doing this, have a look at what you're doing here. And if you have a look at the pictures of neurons, you're going to find that it's quite fascinating that what you're doing here actually looks like neurons in your brain. I'll show you a picture of neurons. Here, have a look. Interesting, isn't it? I also meant to mention too, because this is the healing portion of the neurographic art, you want to try and finish all your rounding in one session if you can, because that's where it's going to be more therapeutic for you. And if it seems daunting to you, don't look at it that way. Look at it as being this is your way of healing yourself. This is the way to give yourself some time to look after yourself. And that's a good thing. Don't think about all these things that you want to rush to do and rush to do that. That's what we're trying to avoid, is all this busyness in our world. Let's just slow down a bit and just enjoy. I've done all my rounding, and there are a few areas that are quite large. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find one of my lines, and I'm going to make sure that it carries through somewhere. So I'm going to cut this in half. I'm going to bring this through and join it up with that one there. And it has now got a connection. And I'll do that if there's any other ones. I might want to come down here and just bring this one around and bring it back down. Now, by doing that, you are going to create more corners. That's okay. You can just come in and round them off again. And while you're doing this, you'll probably find some areas when we do the coloring, you'll go in and go, oh, I forgot to round that off. You can always come back and get it later because I forgot that one right there. Here's another one that I didn't get. It's hard to find them all right away, but she'll get them eventually. Here's another one. And you're probably looking at one going, hey, she's not finding that one right there. It's right there. It's right there. But we'll get it eventually. All right. So let's go on to the next step. Again, when you're coloring, don't use any more than 4 colors. It will make it more harmonious, and it will be more calming and more pleasant. So again, I'll just use my Winsor blue, cerulean blue, viridian green, and Winsor yellow. So now what I'm doing is I'm looking for a grouping of 3 to 5. And I see a nice little chain here. It's going from here. You see how it's all connected up in here? So let's just go in. I'm going to go in with my Winsor blue, and I'm going to paint all of those in. Another rule is if you're going to do one color, repeat it somewhere else in your artwork. So don't leave it just on its own. So I'm going to come up in here in the circle, and I'm going to do a grouping up in here and make sure that I grab 3 to 5 segments in here as well. Just notice I'm getting a little bit too much water in here, so I'm just going to soak that up a little bit with my paper towel here. And we just need to get a little bit more pigment in my blue there. Now be careful with watercolor. If you've just done an area and it's still wet and you go to paint this area and you get into this, it's going to bleed the blue into the yellow. So because I've got nice thick lines here, I'm going to do this little section here, and I'm going to come in with my Winsor yellow. When you're painting coloring, you can go right over the other lines if you want to, but I find I like the nice bold black. If you do go over them, you can always come over and darken in your black lines later. If you want to paint a whole circle the same color, that's totally okay. I can paint this whole circle. Grab this guy here and make him yellow too. Now I'm going to come in with my Verdant green. The other thing I'm looking for is some areas from the wash I did, which are too beautiful to cover up with the washout wet and this in here. So I really want to try to leave that. And that's how you can do this art. You don't have to cover in absolutely every area. You can leave some areas blank. And so what I'm going to do next, I think I'm going to come in here and I'm going to follow my green, because you want to repeat your colors. So I'm going to repeat my green up in this circle here. And for my fourth color, I've got my cerulean blue. And now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to add any more color, but I'm going to come in with a thinner black marker, and I'm going to do a few little accents. So being that, because I love what's happening with my watercolor wash in the back here, I don't want to take away from that, but I'm going to accent it by adding some circles. So I'm going to come in here. I'll just zoom in here in this one section. I'll come in here and I see a circle right in here. Make that into a circle. And I'm just going to keep making circles. Another big one here. And another one. And then I'm just going to fill in behind. And if you're going to choose to do this in one section, I would choose to get another section so you don't have it just in there. So let's come up in here and make some more circles up in here. And I do like groupings of 3. So I've got 1, 2. I'm going to do one more small one over here. You can also do spirals. I don't understand or haven't researched enough what the meaning of the spiral is, but you can certainly do them. And I'm just going to do a small one here just to show you. And you just want to try to keep your spiral as even as you can. And keeping your circle. And being that I've done one here, I want to do a couple more. You can also come in some of your areas and make some just smaller lines in here. You don't want to be following your other contour of your line because you don't want any repetitive patterns. And these lines in here can cross over. So for composition purposes right now, I'm looking, I've got a grouping of 3 here. That's great. I've got a grouping of 3, 4. I've got 1 solo here, but it's sort of in a grouping. We're good here. We're good there. 3. And we've got quite a bit of space in here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Got quite a bit in here. So I think what I might do is come in to this one here and just break up this area here a little bit, and we'll add some more circles right in here. And I have seen some teachers talk about when you're totally finished your piece of artwork, they talk about coming through your whole artwork on top of everything and coming through with some more lines. If you do that, you've got to come back in and do more rounding. And I'm always afraid to do that, but I'm just letting you know that some teachers will come in now on top and then do some final lines. But I just can't do it. So that's the completion of this neurographic art that we've done together. And you can turn your artwork around and you might just see something else that catches your eye and you think, oh yeah, I like that position. And once you're finished that, if you're working on the watercolor block, you can just slip your fingers into an edge there and it will come loose and it will easily come off your block. And you're ready to paint your next one. And the beauty of this, you will never ever get any two alike. Here's one we did together. That's what I was referring to. That's another one done in pinks, yellows, and purples. And there's another one done in watercolor. All 3 of them are totally different. So you can imagine the beautiful art that you can create. And if you want to see how we created the tree of life, then keep watching. If you know you're going to be working with pens, whether it be Sharpie pens or water-based pens or acrylic pens, I like to use an artist marker pad. The paper is really smooth and the pens will just glide right over the surface. My preferred pens are the Artistro pens, and they come in an extra fine tip. They also come in a medium tip. Here's the medium tip, a nice big thick round one for coloring large spaces. And then this is what they look like before they've been primed, and this is the fine tip. So all you do is give it a shake, and then you just press down on the felt tip, and then you wait for the ink to come down into the felt tip. Doesn't take too long. There it is there. I decided to try a neurographic tree. I wasn't going to film this, and I thought, well, maybe I will. And one of the practices in neurographic art is to make freehand circles. They basically say don't use a form or a guide or a compass. You want to freehand it, and it's not easy to make a perfect circle. And as you can see here, this circle here, I was fighting with it, and it's okay to have thicker lines and thinner lines, But if you want to try to get a better circle, then you just keep going around and around until it's better formed. And as you can see up here, I made a mess. But I'm going to fix that by turning that into a line. So here's my line there. You always want to start your lines from a top of a page or a side and go to the other side and finish your lines. You never finish into the middle. So let's say that this line's going kind of like that. I'm going to start up here. You always draw your lines nice and slow. And now I'm going to continue that line. Lift up your arm. It's better to do it that way. And now finish your line. It's okay to cross over another line. So I'm going to continue to make my lines, and I'll speed this up, and then we'll go in and show you the next step. Because I've got some large areas here, I want to try to break up some of those areas. So I'm purposely going to go and hit on my edge of my tree here, and I'll show you on this side here. And I've broken up those big areas. Same on this side. Let's break up some of those areas. And once you've got lots of lines in your drawing, you can come back and find more circle areas. And your next step, as you know, is rounding off. I have a lot of lines in here. So obviously I'm not going to try to do every single one. I'll probably black in a lot of it. So for instance, this part right here will get blacked in. And you've got a little bit of a sharp point here. So I'm going to round that off. And I'll just black that in. And then your usual rounding is making that nice U shaping. And then round it off. Now I find that when you're working with a pen like this, is if you put a lot of pressure, you're going to get a lot of ink. If you don't have a lot of pressure, then you can do it easier. So I start on my line with the light pressure, and then I make my U formation, and then bring it back. If I've gone off of my line, then I just join it up again till it's all smoothed up again and light pressure again. While you're doing this process is when you're in your meditative state. And you're going to be thinking about what it is that you want to work on. Whether you want to work on being more relaxed, whether you want to be more positive, take away the negative, which is always a good thing, of course. I've now finished up all the rounding, and I must say I am nice and relaxed. I put on my meditation music, and that was just a wonderful maybe 20 minutes of just zoning out and letting all my thoughts go and just drawing in. It was wonderful. Now it's time to color in. I am going to use the Artistro medium tip pens for coloring. And to make it more harmonious, it's best to not use more than 4 colors. And I'll show you an example. This is one of my first ones I ever did. And you can see how many colors are in there. It's bright, it's pretty, but it's a little bit unsettling. Especially on one of the things here is I've got one red in here, but I haven't captured that red anywhere else in this picture, and it just sticks right out like a sore thumb. So though there's some more rules, there's lots of little rules to make your paintings look even better. This one here I don't care for. Why? Because I use pencil crayon and I don't like how it wasn't blending, and I've got way too many colors. And so it doesn't look harmonious to me. So something to keep in mind when you're choosing your colors. A few more rules to make your neurographic artwork pop is when you're using a color, you want to do it in a grouping of at least 4 to 5 segments. So all the same color. Don't have one color here, a different one here, and a different one here, make it look like a mosaic. That's not what we're after. And then if I'm going to use this color down here somewhere, you want to repeat it elsewhere in the picture, which won't be a problem. It's a large picture, so I'll be able to repeat these colors up in here. So I've chosen a brown, yellow, and 2 shades of green for my tree. Now, you're going to laugh at me because some people actually don't know how to color. And I wasn't doing it properly down in here, but the best way to do coloring is to grab your pen and go back and forth, overlapping the previous stroke, and you won't get as many lines, and you'll get a more even coloring. Not like that. So again, up in here, just go up and down for your best saturation of color. If you're working with the Artistro acrylic pens and you're finding that it's not coming out very good, then you just need to prime your pen again and just press the felt tip down onto the paper, and it will load more acrylic paint into the felt tip. The other thing I wanted to mention is while I'm working up here, I'm making sure I don't leave any single ones that will just be not in a grouping. So as I'm coloring, I'm going, okay, well, here's another grouping here. There's another grouping there. And so I'm just making sure that I leave groupings that I can color in, so I've got more than, like, say, 3 to 5 in the same color. I think this is so rewarding that I have created this work of art that I can color in. It's so cool. I love that. And while you're coloring, you might find some areas that you didn't round off. It's pretty hard to find them all. There's one right here that's got a really kind of a sharp edge on it. So I'm just going to round that off when I see it there. And you can always come back and fix any ones like that you see. Starting to work up to the top here, I'm going to start adding more of the 2 green colors, but I want to make sure I've got a little tiny bit of brown and yellow up here just to blend it all in. There's my tree all colored in. And now the acrylic markers are fantastic, but they will tend to cover over some of the black. So if that's the case, you can always go back in and just go in and clean up some of the areas that got messed up, which is easy enough to do. Depending on what you choose to color with will also give you a different effect. This one that we just worked on was done with the Artistro acrylic markers. These ones were done on watercolor paper and worked in watercolor. Gives you a nice soft look, and you can do a lot of blending, which is really beautiful. And this one was done all in Sharpie markers, just to give you an idea on the difference it will look depending on what you're using to color with. And this was the watercolor pencils. And on this one, you can see I chose to leave some white. You don't always have to color the whole thing in. And on this one, I did add some spirals, and I added more circles. Well, I hope you enjoyed following along on this neurographic art form. I love it, and I will be doing many more. Choose the medium that you like the best and enjoy creating beautiful works of art and get healthy at the same time.